Greetings, fellow Gorehounds, and welcome back to a Blood Splattered vlog. I'm the Horror Guru.
And I'm Count Jackula.
And he's Count Jackula, and we just watched The Rise of Skywalker, the third and final part of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, I guess we're calling it. We're just going to get right into our spoiler-free thoughts, because I really want to get to the spoilers, so...
Yeah. Well, very quickly, thumbs up.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I think it's the clunkiest of the trilogy, and... it makes some decisions that I probably wouldn't have made myself, but everything fits together thematically, and all the big emotional beats all work.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, so now we're going to get into a sort of dissection of the movie. So if you're like, oh, I haven't seen it yet, you just stop now and come back
we're
once you've seen it.
We're going to get right into the spoilers, but know that if you wanted to know if the movie is fun and enjoyable, it 100% is. But also know it's a little clunky at times. The pacing is a little fast, and there are some things that don't come across as well as the filmmakers intended. So
Yeah, definitely. But with that, it's definitely the Return of the Jedi. Of this.
Well, I also
but I love Return of the Jedi.
Well, yeah, I love Return of the Jedi too. But like much like with the original trilogy, where Return of the Jedi is like my least favorite of the three, I kind of feel that way about this as well. This is like my third in the rung, but I love them all.
Yeah, but also, like Return of the Jedi, it has the best highs.
Oh yes, the highs that hit are like great, because they simultaneously hit both nostalgic highs for the original series, so you got like emotional things that are happening for nostalgic reasons, as well as highs for just being invested in these characters and finally reaching their conclusions after 3 movies and however many years we've been waiting to see where things are going.
There is one thing I want to tell everybody. Rest assured, Wedge Antilles does appear in the film.
It's true. There's a lot of fan service.
Oh yeah.
Which totally worked for me. So with that all said, let us finally move on to the spoilers.
Okay, tell you, after watching this movie, I don't know why, I want a big Alliance medallion on a giant gold chain.
Oh, fuck yeah.
And a fucking Lil Jon goblet that just says "Da Force" in rhinestones. Just be like, yeah!
All right, so let me just give you like a quick rundown of what basically happens in this movie, so you have an idea of what's happening if you're watching the spoilers to see if you want to see the movie yourself. So basically, Palpatine is back. Ben Solo / Kylo Ren is searching out Palpatine because he doesn't want another threat to his power. And then, of course, Palpatine ends up revealing that he's been behind everything this whole time. He's been all the voices in his head, and that fucking Snoke is like a clone of him.
Yeah. So, Snoke is like a fucking defective clone of Palpatine.
So all those people that wanted to know the origins of Snoke, well, they answered that question here.
In the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. I didn't really care if we found out who Snoke was, because we don't really find out much about the Emperor in the original series, but I was fine with this explanation.
Yeah, because I just assumed he was some Sith asshole.
Yeah, it was one of those things, I didn't need that answered, but the way they answered it, I was cool with. I was like, that's fine. So then, of course, it is now the Emperor manipulating Kylo into hunting Rey. Rey has been training for the last few years since the previous movie with Leia. She and her team find out that the Emperor is back, and so they're trying to find these items that will help them get to the Sith homeworld in which the Emperor is, with the idea that if they defeat the Emperor, they will also defeat Kylo and hopefully save the galaxy.
Yeah, there is a lot about the Sith in this movie. Like, before this movie, we'd gotten like, oh, the Sith, what are they? They're the evil Jedi, and that's what they have, red lightsabers. Like, that's really all nobody cared. Well, actually, people cared, but like the movie never really bothered.
And like the prequels would give you like some like stories about like Darth Plagueis and stuff like that. And by the way, based on the fact that Palpatine's been cloning shit, I think this movie kind of confirms de facto that he was Darth Plagueis.
Oh yeah, oh god, yeah. Like he's either Darth Plagueis or more likely
his apprentice.
The apprentice that killed him.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean, which I think we all assumed anyway.
Like that's not something it outright states, but given all the stuff about him cloning things, like I'm okay. Darth Plagueis was all about cheating death, and so the Emperor has cheated death multiple times. So
but
this kind of leads into like my first criticism of the movie, and I say this as someone who loved it. there is a lot to take in this first
Whoa.
20 to 30 minutes of the movie, and it moves so fast it's hard to follow at times. And the movie doesn't really let up at that pace.
Yeah, this plot moves at breakneck speed.
Yeah, like, you know how in most Star Wars movies, you open up with some sort of, like, action sequence or some sort of intense thing, and then we slow down when we get back to the characters. This movie, like, sort of slows down, but then kind of keeps...
for like 30 seconds.
And then kind of keeps at the same pace as the action sequences during the slowdown bits.
Yeah, because what happens after... The first big scene is Kylo confronts the Emperor.
Yes.
And the Emperor is like, I know who Rey is, and I know your destiny. I'm the Emperor.
Which we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, but then we, like, after some shit happens, we cut to Rey, and she's just, like, Jediing out.
Yep. Well, here's the thing. Between that, we also cut to Poe, Finn, and C-3PO being chased down by the Empire or the First Order.
Yeah, the First Order.
The First Order, because they've gotten some information from a spy within the First Order.
Yeah, a spy whose identity
and this is like
have.
a chase action sequence in which we introduce this new concept of lightspeed jumping or skipping, they call it.
Yeah, lightspeed skipping.
Where you're basically like skipping from one location to another to try to lose them, which I was okay with that. I know there were some people...
they have been doing... Well, let me put it this way. That's something that they did in Force Awakens.
Yeah, I was cool with this. It's a thing that
it was a natural progression of what had happened in Force Awakens.
It's a thing that I feel like I've seen in other Star Wars things, but never outright given a name, and so now we have a name.
Yeah, now we have a name.
And even if it is a brand new thing, I was okay with it, because I'm like, why can't you do that?
The only thing I wish that they had done is referred to it as the Solo maneuver.
Oh yeah, that would be great. That would be fucking great. Oh yeah, that would be great. So, and then we get to Rey, and she's in the middle of one of her training sessions with Leia. She's being trained by Leia with this one, which is actually something I really like. In the first movie, she's kind of becomes like the protege of Han Solo briefly, and then she's under the tutelage of Luke in the second one, and in this one, she's under the tutelage of Leia.
Yeah, which Leia's a Jedi master.
And here's the thing,
just flat out.
I want to commend the filmmakers for this, because they were dealt a really raw deal here.
Oh God, yes.
With Carrie Fisher dying after the release of the last movie. Or actually,
during filming,
before the movie was finally released, they had to basically cobble together her scenes from footage they shot from the previous two movies. So basically, all the dialogue exchanges with her had to be adapted for that, and you can feel the clunkiness of that in the beginning, but. Like, what else were they gonna do?
Yeah. If you're a filmmaker, like, you're gonna see those scenes.
Yeah, the seams are gonna be pretty, and you can also tell that like everyone else is on like a location, and she's kind of been like cropped out into.
Yeah. Like, well, I like there's also one part where what she does is basically an unused take of a scene from Last Jedi.
You can tell,
and so the blocking is identical.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I mean, what else were they going to do? They couldn't just cut her out of the story. The story would be fucked up.
And plus, like, this wouldn't make sense without her in it. Given everything that's supposed to happen. Plus, like I said, it makes sense that Rey is taught by all three of the main characters from the previous movie.
Yeah, so. there is the real downside is that there is one point where you're like, this was supposed to be Princess Leia.
Yes.
Who did this?
Yeah.
This was absolutely supposed to be her, but we didn't have her.
Yeah.
They did, with that said, they did an amazing patch-up job.
I am not going to spoil who, but there is a character who talks to Ben at one point, and is not a ghost, but is actually a memory. And that scene was obviously at one point going to be like Leia's ghost talking to him.
Yeah.
But they couldn't shoot new footage. So.
Yeah. And that was the big problem. And it's such an emotionally heavy scene. You had to have an actor there.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't like CGI that. It wasn't going to work.
It's a great example of the stuff in this movie that 100% works, because that scene
that scene was
such
great.
An emotional high and such like one of those gut-wrenching moments where you're like, like, you know,
it was how to put it. Thank God they came up with a really good plan B.
Yes, absolutely. Now, there is some things at the beginning of this movie that I feel like were a little also rough and clunky. Leia just has Luke's lightsaber again, but it was destroyed.
Oh, yeah.
It was destroyed at the end of the last movie, and I'm okay with her rebuilding it, but all I really needed was one line of like, "Oh yeah, the rebuilt lightsaber is working real well." Like, just like, that's all I needed.
Yeah. Or during an exposition scene, like Rey actually like putting it together. You know, putting on the final touches or something.
And there's a lot of little things like that I felt like,
because I felt the entire time I'm looking at Rey's lightsaber, because I remember so well that the fucking Luke's original blue lightsaber was destroyed.
Yeah.
It's
one of the greatest scenes in the Last Jedi.
Yeah, it's a major scene. I kept finding myself going like, all right, she got a new lightsaber. And then they refer to it as Luke's lightsaber as opposed to like one that she built. And I was like, wait, shouldn't that be the green one? Yeah, that should be the green one because that's the only one that's left.
And then they bring in a green one later that's Leia's lightsaber. And I assumed that, I don't know, they never say it, but I kind of assumed it was Luke's second lightsaber, but now Leia's. I have no idea.
Yeah. But it was like, I wouldn't have done that. I would just made that lightsaber the green one that she got. And then, because Luke ends up giving her Leia's, we see her pick up Leia's lightsaber.
Yeah.
So that can just be any color we need it to be.
That was a thing that was clunky, but I kind of liked, even though I felt like it could have been executed better, was the whole thing about how, like, oh yeah, there was a point in time when Leia was training herself as a Jedi, but then decided to abandon that. And I was fine with that, though the way it's executed in this feels a little rushed.
well, it was rushed, but like, how to put it, it perfectly explains why she abandons the traditional Jedi path.
Yes.
Despite the fact that when you really get down to it, she's a Jedi Master.
And for all those people that whined and complained about her using Force powers in The Last Jedi, here you go. She trained. Are you happy?
Yeah. Well, like... Yeah, I found myself going like, maybe it's because I like watched so many Kung Fu movies, but I assume that when you see the old person...
Who was established in the old ones as already being Force sensitive, so she has
who has the talent. When you see them, holy shit, some shit's gonna happen, man. They're gonna be super powerful.
The character who is the explanation for the there is another.
Yeah.
Like, of course she's going to be able to use Force
powers. Well, she has
powers.
To be as powerful as Luke, otherwise she wouldn't be the other New Hope.
Yeah, so I was totally fine with her in The Last Jedi doing that, and I'm also totally fine with them giving a little bit more backstory on that in this movie.
Yeah.
Because maybe it'll shut up the whiners.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I liked is that they did do a really good... This is where they used the CGI to recreate...
Oh, the young Leia.
Luke and young Leia. And meaning, like, you know, the age they were at the end of Return of the Jedi.
I'm pretty sure that was Leia's daughter, because I know she did some stand-in for her in this movie. So I think they might have CGI'd young Leia's face onto
her daughter. Yeah. The job they did on Luke's face was amazing.
Not Leia's daughter, Carrie Fisher's daughter. Sorry.
Yeah.
She's always Leia in my heart.
Yeah, the job they did on Mark Hamill's young face was amazing. I was like, holy shit, he looks like he just fucking came off her.
They've been honing those skills, like with the Marvel movies, like Disney's been honing that, like that, and I think they definitely have found the right one.
Oh yeah. Also, the scene is very brief, so it doesn't go on for too terribly
nice and
long.
quick.
Yeah, nice and quick. Gets the idea across, and you're like, oh hey, that looked cool.
Yep.
You know.
I do like the culmination of all that at the point in which Rey has to use both lightsabers at a certain point. That's really cool. All I really needed though was just a little bit more of an explanation to how the broken lightsaber got unbroken.
Yeah, we can assume that she put it back together, but because they're assholes like all of us, I feel like they should have taken the 5 seconds to do something about that.
So the plot ends up going forward with the characters searching for the MacGuffins that will help them find the Jedi Temple.
Yeah.
And some of this is a little
ancient Sith technology.
And this is when the movie's moving at its most fast, and it's hard to keep up with at certain points. And there's a lot of things that I let slide because I was having so much fun. But it is fun. But there's like moments in which like, oh, we happen to fall in this exact cave that has the exact thing we want, which we would never have fallen if we weren't chased into it.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's a little lazy from a writing standpoint, but I'll live with it. Maybe the Force guided them. I have no idea.
Yeah. How does the lightsaber only know how to go that high?
But this is a great example.
That's your answer for everything.
But that scene's a great example of some clunky writing leading to some of my favorite moments, because that led into this great moment in which we establish one of Rey's new force powers, in that she has this healing ability in which she gives a little bit of her life force and she can heal wounds. It's a force healing, which has been in video games and stuff like that before. We're just now seeing it.
It just never had been in the movies.
Yeah. So we're now seeing it in the movies, and so Rey has that ability, and she uses it to heal this snake monster instead of them killing it.
Yeah.
Which goes thematically into the point of the movie. Like, after seeing all three movies, that line from Rose in The Last Jedi is one of the major things in this movie. That whole line about, this is how we win, not by fighting who we hate, but by saving who we love. And Rey kind of embodies that in this movie with this new healing ability.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, in which she's now healing wounds instead of just slashing people into pieces. And that was really cool.
Also, I want to rub this in people's faces because this fucking annoyed me. When people were talking about how much they hated The Last Jedi, there were a lot of people who were talking about, what about the Knights of Ren? I was like, who gives a fuck about it? They're just some fucking assholes. It's like the Clone Wars. It's just a thing that happened.
Let me make one thing very clear. I don't give two shits about the Knights of Ren.
No, me neither. But they're in the movie.
They were mentioned one-off in The Force Awakens and shown briefly in a flashback. They never come up in the second movie because I forgot they were even mentioned in the first movie.
Yeah.
So that I guarantee it was one of those things where it's just like, all right, well, if someone wants to do something with this later, they can do it in the third movie. And so they finally do it in the third movie, and it's Abrams doing it, and they're kind of just cool-looking bad guys that do nothing.
Yeah, they're the fucking bounty hunters from Empire Strikes Back.
They captured Chewie at one point, and then get their asses kicked by Ben.
Yeah.
Rey never really fights them. They were kind of useless. They are Boba Fett all over again.
Oh yeah, totally.
This thing that the fan
they're Boba Fett all over again, except they're all variations on Kylo Ren's outfit.
Yeah.
You know,
they are these characters that the fan base latched onto because of like a one-off line, and then made a bigger deal out of than the creators ever did.
Yeah,
and then ultimately, when they finally do culminate into something, it's just kind of there.
Yeah. Just kind of exists.
And here's the thing, I don't care because I never cared about them.
Well, yeah, it was like, it's one of those things like, oh, hey, the Knights of Ren. Okay, that's cool. And then you're done with them and you're like, okay, yeah, all right. Yeah. Okay, there was really nothing to them.
Nope.
They were, as I said, they were the rogues gallery of fucking bounty hunters from fucking every bounty hunter that wasn't Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Except they kind of go out like Boba Fett.
And now that we're at this point in the movie, I do want to talk about one of the cool things that Abrams does that builds upon something that Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi. In The Last Jedi, he established this connection between Rey and Kylo, one in which they kind of force project each other, and they have these conversations. And in that movie, he established that they can touch, and that they can bring things from one to the other.
Yeah.
From one world to the other. So it's like almost like a weird force projection meets teleportation thing. And so in this movie, J.J. Abrams takes that idea to the next level and has them have these massive lightsaber battles.
Yeah.
While force projecting to one another.
Yeah. In completely separate, like they're not even on the same planet.
And here's the thing. One thing I love about the sequel trilogy is that all the lightsaber battles are fucking phenomenal. And the lightsaber battles between Rey and Ben, or Kylo, and Kylo are amazing, especially the ones in which they're force projecting and they're in two different environments. And
they did such a good job with that.
Yeah,
that was really great, because that is something we never. I'm like, whoa, we never saw that before.
Absolutely,
crap. You know,
absolutely. And that leads into probably one of the most controversial decisions this movie made, and I'm of multiple minds on it. And is a thing that I wasn't okay with. Well, I wouldn't have done, but I was okay with, is the best way to put it. Is they go back on the idea of Rey coming from nothing, coming from just like a bunch of junkers, and make it so that now she is Palpatine's granddaughter. So her parents were still junkers, and so Kylo wasn't lying in the last movie. It's just there was information he didn't have, that she actually is a Palpatine and is Emperor Palpatine's granddaughter.
Yeah.
Now, Here's the thing about this. It thematically works with the movie because one of the big themes of this movie and the entire sequel trilogy as a whole is that of the chosen family. It's that of these people that you were born to or forced into, like with Finn being forced into being a stormtrooper as a kid, or with Rey being left on a planet and waiting for a family that was never going to return, or Kylo, who had his family he was born into, but they were so afraid of him that one of them nearly went to kill him because he was too powerful, and so he was rejected and ran to a new chosen family in the First Order. That theme runs throughout this entire movie. So having her have this fucked up family that she actually comes from and reject that family by the end of the movie when she confronts Palpatine, that works thematically, though I feel like you still could have done the chosen family thing by having her choosing one chosen family over another chosen family by the end of it. But I mean,
I was actually I was actually okay with this whole idea that Rey was the granddaughter of Palpatine, because I'm like, okay, if we're gonna link her lineage back into the movie, she obviously is not a Skywalker by blood.
Yeah.
You know, so what does that leave?
Yeah.
That leaves the Emperor.
Yes.
You know, and it's one of those, it is an interesting thing because as you go through the movie, you can tell that this was one of the possibilities that they had written in but hadn't decided on.
That's the other thing. The other reason why I was okay with it, even though it's not the choice I would have made, was that it actually works with the last two movies.
It does.
Because in the last two movies, especially in The Last Jedi, there's a huge emphasis on her being drawn by the dark side. In fact, when she goes to Luke and Luke starts to train her, she immediately is gravitated towards the dark side to the point that it scares Luke.
Yeah.
So revealing her to have come from the Palpatine bloodline, that she's actually like the daughter of a very powerful Sith Emperor.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of explains that. Like, big time.
Yeah. And how to put it, it makes sense that Luke might have that blind spot. Especially
if you see it as the reason why the dark side was pulling her in was because it was Palpatine the whole time.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah, so every time like Luke is like, oh God, I feel a force that blah, 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 it's because fucking Palpatine.
Now, the one thing I thought was a little clunky and I wasn't sure if I bought completely was Luke saying that he and Leia knew the whole time. And I'm like, I don't know if...
I don't know about the whole... I don't know about that. I feel like... I found myself going like, well, maybe by the end of The Last Jedi.
Maybe you eventually figured it out after you both died, which, by the way, Leia dies in this, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Maybe after you both died, you kind of figured it out at that point, because now you can see beyond space. Like,
yeah, exactly.
But like the fact that you knew the whole time, like, I don't know. That seems like a stretch.
Well, it does seem a little weird, yeah.
But that, like I said, it's a clunky thing, but I was okay with it.
Yeah, well, it's like I'm totally okay with like Leia having known by the end of The Last Jedi, because the few moments we have with Carrie Fisher in the beginning that aren't like reused footage, you can tell that she at least is acting as if she has a knowledge that she is deliberately withholding.
Yeah,
much like how in the original New Hope, Ben Kenobi, when he's like, "Who is Darth Vader?" Ben Kenobi's like, you know, he does that. It's like he didn't know what the secret was, but he knew there was supposed to be one.
One thing I will make very clear is that I'm not one of those people that thought that Abrams had this all figured out from the get-go. I kind of know that they're making it up as they go along. So, like, as long as it works, I'm okay with it. Like,
yeah. It was multiple choice all the way up to this movie.
You know, he probably had vague ideas of what he wanted to do, and there was multiple options he could do. And then eventually, as everything developed, he chose one or the other, and this is the one he chose. And it worked with the rest of the movie, so I'm okay with it. I know it's going to be controversial to a whole lot of people, but for me, I was like, all right, you know what? This makes sense with everything. And plus, having her at the very end take on the Skywalker name, hence the title, The Rise of Skywalker, because the Skywalkers were her chosen family and were the family that actually did raise her, not raise her, but gave her tutelage over the last few years. That made sense to me.
You know, gave her real purpose and meaning and belonging.
Exactly. This is her family. And that actually brought the entire trilogy into focus for me, because it made me realize how much of this trilogy has all been about chosen family from the get-go, whether or not they intended that. Like, it's
yeah. I'd be willing to say that they at least intended that through line.
It was definitely a thing that is usually in J.J. Abrams' work.
Yeah.
Like, it's in the Star Trek movie, it's in Super 8, it's in a lot of his works. And I guarantee that when Rian Johnson was writing The Last Jedi, he picked up on a little bit of that and, like, carried that as far as he could. Because even his revelation, like, you came from nothing, you're not really a part of this story, also works towards the chosen family thing.
Exactly,
You know,
exactly. You know,
it's
no
just a
matter
different angle of it.
Yeah, no matter what multiple choice the next scriptwriter actually went with, this whole idea of chosen family was obviously, that worked out extremely well.
Now,
and
now I will say,
God, can I even do this anymore? Like that's like, God damn it!
Nah,
Nazis ruin everything, man.
Well, they're culture vultures. They take things that are part of pop culture, co-opt them, corrupt them, and then try to seduce people to the dark side, much like the Emperor.
Dun, 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 dun.
Hence why the Emperor, the First Order...
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Oh.
Hence why the Emperor, the First Order, and the Empire as a whole in the original trilogy were all coded fascists.
Oh, yeah. Oh fuck! Oh, they're straight up Nazis, man.
That's one of my favorite moments in the Force Awakens, is that huge Nazi speech that what's his name?
Hulse.
Yeah, whatever that guy makes, the fucking weaselly fucking British dude.
Yeah.
Who has a great moment in this movie, by the way. So yeah, so we find out about that through a confrontation that is very much like, search your heart, you know it to be true, redone.
Yeah.
A little bit too on the nose with that, to the point where he actually says that.
Yep.
But so we find out about that, and then we lead into another MacGuffin chase for the final item that will lead. And this was a weird thing. They came up with this idea of this thing called the Wayfinder.
Yeah, the Sith Wayfinder. Yeah.
What's weird for that is I feel like Star Wars lore already had the, like, holocrons. So, like, I don't know why they had to come up with a new idea when they already had the holocrons, which were items of knowledge left behind by ancient Sith and Jedi.
Yeah. I think it was just probably for like narrative efficiency.
Okay, fine. It's the Wayfinder. It finds the way. Like, all right, fine. I'll roll with it.
It's the Sith Wayfinder.
Most of the MacGuffin chase stuff is some of the clunkier writing for me, because you end up with like, oh yeah, we found this knife that just happens to match the shape of a fallen Death Star because someone made that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, fine. That's dumb as shit. I'll roll with it, but that's stupid. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I found myself going like, how did you know that those ruins weren't going to fall apart more? They probably were.
Yeah, that's one of those like, all right, whatever, fine. That's an example of kind of the clunkiness, but like, the thing is that all the big moments work, but the getting to point A to point B is clunky at times.
Yeah. Another big problem I had with that was the like, how do you know to stand just in that fucking spot so that fucking works?
Yeah, what if you stood at the other part of the cliff or over there? Or like, what? Okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah. What is telling you got to do this right
like,
here?
All of a sudden, we're pulling an Indiana Jones thing.
Oh, yeah.
Which, with Indiana Jones, it's supposed to be like ancient ruins. That's a thing that like fell like 50 years ago. Like, that's...
Yeah. You know, that's been falling apart for a while. Who made that? How old is this knife, man?
Yeah, like that's some of the clunkiest stuff in the movie, is just the like them desperately trying to get to the point in which they can have the plot happen.
Yeah.
But that also leads into another clunky scene for me. That's an awesome scene, but it was a little clunky because the movie was moving so fast, I couldn't tell something kind of vital. And that's that when she gets onto the Death Star to get the final Wayfinder so that she can find Emperor Palpatine, she encounters Kylo. But the thing is, during the entire fight scene with him, as awesome as it was, I couldn't tell if they were force projecting fighting or if he was actually there until the end.
There was a bit of that, yeah.
I feel like I just needed something to clue me in that they're actually fighting on the same location. But that's a small thing, because that fight scene was one of the best fight scenes in the movie, and also leads to some of the most emotional moments. Because that's the fight scene in which, while he's fighting Rey, Leia reaches out to him in the Force to the point that it strains her and she ends up dying. And it's this act and all that stuff that ends up leading to Kylo beginning his journey to turn. Because again, the thing that Rose said in the second movie that has become very important as this movie has gone on, and even in retrospect fits with the first movie, is that this is how we win, by saving the people we love, not by fighting those we hate. And I don't know which order that was in, but that's not the point. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And that's how Rey ends up ultimately defeating Kylo, and so does Leia, by showing him love, showing him compassion, and helping him take the final steps to returning. And I thought all that actually really worked. And I was one of those people that wasn't sure if I wanted him to be redeemed.
Yeah, me neither. You
know, especially by the end of The Last Jedi, he's become so evil. It's great.
He's such a
But I thought
prick.
that part, for the clunkiness of everything else, actually worked.
It did. I thought that worked very well. And
here's the thing. I'm going to say this right now, and it's going to make this movie sound really bad, but trust me, for me, I'm not saying something really negative here, but this movie to me was the Spider-Man 3 of the trilogy. It felt like two movies crammed together that didn't quite mesh, but they were desperately trying to make work. It retconned some very important things from the previous movies, and that I kind of preferred they didn't, but I could roll with, like how they retconned Uncle Ben's death in Spider-Man 3. There's some questionable creative choices at times that I don't think worked as well as the creators wanted, but all of the emotional highs of the movie work. Like, everything with the Sandman in Spider-Man 3, like actually turning at the end and helping him and being good. Everything with, Green Goblin 2 going bad and then learning the error's ways and coming to save him at the end. All those emotional highs, him marrying Mary Jane, like all this.
Yeah.
All these things emotionally work, even if the movie as a whole is very clunky. And I kind of feel very similarly about this movie. And I know that because Spider-Man 3 has become such a meme as a really bad movie, people are going to take that to mean like, oh, this movie's dog shit. No, it's not. I actually like Spider-Man 3 for all its flaws. So for me, I'm saying this with love. Like,
well, I'm gonna say it's the Return of the Jedi, as I said in the beginning, because that is the Return of the Jedi has, in my opinion, some of the greatest highs in the OT Star Wars trilogy, but it's also the weirdest.
There's some things I will say about this movie that I liked over Return of the Jedi, which is a hot take. But one thing I really liked at this, at the end of the movie when they're finally confronting, because the Emperor has built this new fleet of like massive amounts of
Super Star Destroyers
with fucking planet destroying technology like the Death Star built into them.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, there's this giant space battle happening between the Resistance and this fleet, and the Resistance is losing because they're just simply outnumbered. And then there's this great emotional moment in which the entirety of the galaxy comes together to fight. It's very cheesy, but I love it.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing is, I love that because I like that in this movie, the entire galaxy bands together to defeat the Empire, as opposed to just a band of Ewoks.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah. No. The final like Resistance versus the New Order fucking battle, or versus the Emperor battle is fucking amazing.
Oh, it's super fucking great.
You know, super good. It's everything that those big starship battles in the prequel trilogy were trying to be, but weren't.
Yeah. So, eventually we lead to the point in which Rey has learned her tutelage. She has lost the Wayfinder because Ben destroys it, and she has just gotten to a battle with Ben that she wins, but at the cost of her soul, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so she tries to do what every single Jedi does when they fail massively and feel like they've done wrong to the galaxy. She goes to a fucking island and tries to become a hermit.
Yeah.
She pulls the Ben Kenobi, she pulls the Yoda, and she pulls the Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
And of course, at this point, who comes to her to set her straight but Luke himself, just like Yoda did back in
Last Jedi.
Jedi, in a very similar scene. And here's a weird thing. I've heard a lot of people who took him apologizing for being wrong in The Last Jedi as an apology for The Last Jedi as a movie.
What?
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. He's apologizing for being wrong in The Last Jedi because in The Last Jedi he was supposed to be wrong. If you thought that he was supposed to be right, you weren't paying attention. There's a reason why Yoda has to come down and give him a talking to.
Oh my god! Who the fuck thought that was like, oh, that's an apology?
Well, it's the same people. It's the same people that misinterpret The Last Jedi as being everything that Kylo Ren says. But Kylo Ren's the villain. He's not right.
Yeah, no, he's completely wrong.
The people who are
wrong by the end of that movie.
Rewatch The Last Jedi. You know? The two people that are the voice of the audience not the voice of the audience, but the voice of the author are when Yoda shows up and speaks to Luke and talks about how failure is important and how we are what they grow beyond us and stuff like that. That whole speech. That's the voice of the author. The second voice of the author moment in The Last Jedi is when Rose gives her speech about, like I said, about this is how we win, not by fighting who we hate, but by saving who we love. That's the second voice of the author moment in that movie.
That's the point.
Those are the 2 points of the movie. Anything else is you taking the villain's word for gospel.
Yeah, exactly. And which I just...
Anyway, that's enough about The Last Jedi. But like, so she does that. We had this great moment. I liked it. I did think it was a little weird when he said we knew the whole time. I thought it was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But this also leads to a really cool moment in which he leads her to Leia's lightsaber. And what I really like about this, it's very obvious what the intention is here. It's like, oh, is she supposed to pick up Leia's lightsaber because she's gonna take Leia's thing? No, the whole point is that she's taking Leia's lightsaber along with Luke's because Ben Solo needs his mom's lightsaber.
Yeah.
That's the point of this.
Yeah. We're stronger together.
So that he can come back to the light side, he needs to take up the mantle of his mom's saber.
Yeah. It's totally like, bitch, we stronger together if we bind together as one.
Absolutely.
You know?
And this does lead to like another scene that was like, things were flying by so fast that I was like, wait, hold on, slow down a minute. Because we cut to, okay, so there's a fight with Rey and Kylo. She defeats him and then heals him, and then we cut to all the other characters all of a sudden back on the Rebel base, like a galaxy away.
Yeah, that was
and I was just like,
confusing.
whoa, hold on. And they didn't tell him that Leia died until they got there? Whoa, what the fuck? That's a little weird. And then we cut to Rey on the hermit island that the last Jedi temple.
Yeah, the first Jedi temple.
First Jedi temple. Yeah, that Luke was at, and I'm like, whoa, she got there fast. And then we cut back, and Ben is still on the Death Star.
Yep.
And I was just like, whoa, okay, how long has he just been standing there contemplating life?
Yeah.
But then it leads to one of the greatest emotional moments. Like I said, getting from point A to B is a little clunky, but the moments work.
Yeah. One of the really fun aspects of this is they take force powers to a whole new fucking level of power.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there's a lot of contention for this. They add a whole lot of, like, force power abilities in this, and I was okay with that. Because that's what the original trilogy did. The original trilogy would just throw a new power at you. It's like, oh, now they can pull lightsabers to them.
Yeah, Luke can just fucking, like, pull lightsabers.
Now this guy can make lightning out of his fingers. Which actually was a great moment. The moment in which they were hinting at her being Palpatine, in which her and Kylo were battling over that one ship and pulling it to one another, tug-of-warring.
Yeah. There's a moment where, like, you know, Chewbacca gets captured and they're flying away, and Rey is just like, no, and reaches out as if to try to grab it, and she does.
Yeah, and they end up in this tug-of-war over the ship to save Chewie, and then she accidentally lightning powers it because, like, she gets angry.
Boom!
She gets angry and the dark side comes out. Like, you know.
Yeah, you're like, oh. Yeah, okay.
I will say that the death of Chewie needed a little bit more time to breathe. Because it happens, and then it almost immediately tells you he's alive, and I'm like, well, I had no moment to, like, mourn for that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like, I love a lot of the little touches that they had with, like, you know, like, maybe Rey has, you know, is being seduced by the dark side.
Yep.
Because she exhibits a lot of Palpatine and Vader's abilities.
Oh, yeah.
You know, one of them, which you might not catch, is the fact that she can throw her lightsaber like Anakin did.
Yeah.
You know, just the whole, like, you know,
she does that sometimes, yeah.
You know, she does that a couple of times.
pretty cool.
Oh yeah, no, it's super cool. It was super cool.
So yeah, eventually this culminates in the final battle where she realizes that the ship she stole from Kylo to get to the island has a wayfinder on it because there's two of them, and Kylo had the other one. And so she goes to confront Emperor Palpatine. The Resistance somehow figures out where the fucking planet is.
Well, like they know. Well, yeah. Well, they find out that like this evil fleet with like miniature Death Star lasers attached to every.
And they track
ship.
where that fleet comes from, so they find it without the wayfinder.
Oh no! Rey shows the.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Where it is.
You're right. Okay, that happened so fast. I almost forgot.
Yeah, it happens really quick.
Yeah, where it's like they think they're getting a message from Luke, but it's from Rey in Luke's ship because there's this awesome moment where she takes Luke's ship.
Where like the Force ghost of Luke is like, nah, you gotta fucking get back out in the galaxy. Yeah. Raises his old X-wing and they play the classic. And
that moment is fucking great.
Ew, man, it was awesome.
Right, so. We're going to have a cut right here because we need to plug in the battery.
Okay.
Ugh. All right, and we're back. So,
yeah, sorry. We felt that since we were doing a vlog that like we had more than enough battery life, but then we forgot we were talking about Star Wars.
So we just kept going.
Yeah.
And it's an old battery pack, so
it doesn't
hold the charge like it used to.
Yeah, so when it says, you got an hour and a half, yeah, that's a fucking lie.
So the thing that I almost forgot to mention was that there's this whole really funny reveal in which we find out that the spy who's been leaking information to the Resistance within the First Order is the smarmy British dude from the first two movies.
Yeah.
And I love it. He does it for a very petty reason because obviously at the end of The Last Jedi, he wanted to be the supreme leader, but because Kylo took that position, it's like a fuck you to him.
Yeah. I don't need the rebellion to win. I need Kylo Ren to lose.
And obviously the First Order does not buy when he helps them that he was being tortured into it, and so they immediately kill him.
Oh yeah, he was fucking.
And I was just like, good riddance. That guy was a Nazi bastard. Like,
yeah.
So I liked that. That was really fun.
Yeah.
A great example of some of the clunkiness of this movie, I think, like what kind of highlights how this movie is clunky is there is this one reoccurring, like, I don't want to say it's subplot, but where Finn at a certain point earlier in the movie where he thought they were all going to die tells Rey, I really want to tell you something. But then when it turns out they're not going to die, he's like, oh, no, it doesn't matter. I'll tell you later. And then later there's a scene in which it looks like they're about to die again. And so Poe's like, so what did you want to tell her? And he's like, oh, this is a bad time. I don't want to tell you whatever. And then seemingly to me, he never confronts Rey and it never culminates in anything. So I left the movie going like, oh, that was a weird thing to not actually have a...
resolution to. Yeah. Because they make such a big deal about it.
But then I found out later, there's a point later on in the movie in which Finn senses through the Force something that's happening with Rey. And it's a scene that happens real fast. It's just a real quick moment, kind of like when they used to cut to Leia in the original trilogy.
Yeah, it's exactly like that, yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, well, he's Force sensitive too. That makes sense. They kind of established that one of the reasons why he was able to leave the First Order in the first movie was like his Force awakened too. So that makes sense. But then I found out afterwards that according to J.J. Abrams, that was the thing he wanted to tell Rey. But it doesn't come across in the movie that that's the payoff.
No, it did not.
That's like... really clunky. That's
because like what happens in the middle of all this other shit.
Yeah.
And then whether or not fucking Finn has the power of the Force doesn't really factor into the story.
And so I was just like, okay, that's a weird thing. Like, I feel like you could have cut the whole thing and just had him sense the Force. Like, that would have been fine.
Yeah.
Like that was weird.
Yeah, it was really weird. It was like, oh, we better bring this back up because people may have forgotten shit that happened in The Force Awakens, but having seen The Force Awakens before going to watch
because I watched both movies right beforehand, so I had them all fresh in my mind.
Yeah, having watched this one, it was like, that was completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
You know, because you already did that thing in two other movies. We didn't, we could have just been like, oh, that's right. Finn hears the voice of the Force.
Like, even if you handled it a little better, where you had a moment where he's just like, "That's what I wanted to tell you. I can sense the Force." Like, just something.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't really come across, and it seemed kind of unnecessary.
Yeah,
because what it felt like was that you were about to have. Okay, here's my thought process with it. I'm like, wait, is he in love with Rey? Is that what he wants to tell her? What about Rose? They kissed at the end of the last movie.
Yeah. What about her? Like, what's going on?
And then they introduce a new main character, who's like a foil for him that it feels like they might be developing some sort of relationship with. It's another person who left the First Order and was a stormtrooper and has now found her own chosen family.
Yeah. Well, they play with you because, like, you're wondering if a relationship is developing or if it's completely one-sided on her part.
Yeah, and so then I was just like, okay, you're developing another relationship, but is he going to tell Rey he loves him? But what about Rose? So that was my thought process. And then he never tells Rey anything. And so I'm like, okay, did he not because he fell in love with this new girl? Was that supposed to be the idea? Wait, again, what about Rose? Like,
yeah. The fact that there is this potential relationship between him and another ex-stormtrooper is given way more importance than the fact that he hears the Force.
And then they don't seem to actually develop a relationship between him and her. It just seems to be a friendship. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't tell Rey anything. And then again, they don't have him like kiss Rose at the end of the movie, so it almost feels like they abandoned that.
Yeah. It's like she wasn't a major character in the second film.
That was the thing that really annoyed me. They introduced these two names.
At least Lando fucking got to fly the fucking Millennium Falcon at the end of Return of the Jedi.
In this movie, at the 11th hour, they introduced two new characters. One of which I really freaking like and I thought was cool and was kind of like a foil for Poe. And that was awesome.
Well, I liked both characters, but their functions in the story are not equal.
Yeah, well, that was what I was going to say, is that the other one I liked, but it felt weird because everything she was doing in the movie felt like you could have done with Rose.
Yeah,
because at the end of the movie, like, they're fighting alongside the rebellion and they're about to die together and all this stuff. And I'm like, I feel like I'd be more emotionally invested if you took the character we had established and had this happening.
Because how to put it, the idea that Finn would be in love with Rey would have made sense.
It would also track with the previous movies. Like, he asked her if she had a boyfriend and was like, has been trying to find her. Yeah.
So, like, if we had done that with Rose instead, then it would have mirrored the love triangle of the OT Star Wars, and you should have had that moment where it was sort of like, Rose is like, I understand that you love her. He's like, oh no, that wasn't going to be what I told her at all. I was going to tell her, I felt it. When we first met, I felt the power.
Exactly.
Of the Force.
That would have been a great thing. But
and then she's like, "Oh, okay."
That whole thing is really clunky, and I don't understand the entire decision process for that. And that also leads into like one of my other like big criticisms, and that's that I did not like how they sidelined Rose in this movie.
No, that seemed really weird.
They make a big point of her not going on the ship with everyone and like staying with Leia, and then just being there to like spout off like, this is happening, Leia. What do we do? For cutaways.
Yeah, and the thing is, she does do important stuff in the story, but the movie doesn't highlight it.
Yeah. And I was just like, it felt weird that we spent all this time with her in the previous movie to just sideline her in this one, especially when it ends with her kissing Finn, so she's connected to a character.
Yeah. You mean at the end of Last Jedi?
Last Jedi.
Yeah, totally. Like, so it felt like that. It felt like that romance should have definitely been highlighted.
That was your Leia and Han.
Exactly.
So it would feel weird if that doesn't amount to anything in the next movie. Like,
exactly. But no, they didn't go there.
Weird creative decisions there, but okay. So now we're in like the final act. We have the battles going on, and this is where the movie is shining and everything's at 11.
Yeah.
Because you have the big emotional moments where it looks like the Resistance is going to lose, and then the entire galaxy shows up, being led by Billy D. Williams as Lando, because of course he's the one who could gather the entire galaxy.
Because he's General Calrissian, baby.
Yes. And that's great. You have Rey, who's confronting Palpatine, who basically reveals that his big grand plan is for her to kill him and then embody the entirety of the Sith Lords inside her and become the ultimate Sith Emperor. Now, here's the thing. I love this revelation. However, I am confused because he spent most of the movie telling Kylo to kill her.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the plan was whichever of them won was going to be the one he was going to ask to kill him.
It's all a god.
I don't know. I can come up with justifications, but the movie doesn't really necessarily give me one outright. So
yeah. Yeah, especially, although I will have to say that final scene in front of the most Sith throne.
It's the most terrifying the Emperor has ever fucking been.
Oh my god, yeah. Like,
when he's like on that fucking crane thing.
Yeah, he's like hooked up to this machine like he's one of the tech priests of Mars from 40K.
And you have like this like lightning strikes happening all around like a gothic horror movie. Now I will say, I did want them to cool it a little bit because I was having trouble seeing things at a certain point.
Yeah,
There's a point in which it pans around Rey and reveals this huge crowd of people behind her, but at first it didn't register as people and instead registered to me as like textures of a wall because all the lightning strikes were hard to make it focus on anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now here's my big question. They reveal early on that he was cloning himself and that the Snoke was a clone, and then they show all these hooded figures that are like worshiping Palpatine. And I was sitting there the whole time, like, all I really want is for one of them to take off their robes and reveal that they're all Palpatine.
Yeah, or something like that.
They're all Palpatine clones. They don't do that, but I kind of wanted them to. So the ultimate culmination of everything is that Palpatine wants her to strike him down. Essentially, it is the Rose situation.
Yeah.
Kill who you hate and embody the hate.
Yeah. Strike me down with all your
But while this is all happening,
and your journey to the dark side shall be complete.
While this is all happening, Ben Solo's had this whole little journey that's been happening away from Rey, in which he's been encountered a memory that has helped him move past. He's thrown away his lightsaber. He's kind of dealt with the fact that his mom just died trying to save him. And he ends up running in with what was it? Was it Han's gun he had, or was it just a gun that looked like Han's gun?
Ooh, I don't know.
Because there was a point when she was running with the blaster, and I'm like, is that Han's blaster? Because if it is, that's a great touch.
I'd have to see the movie again to get that detail.
If it is, that's a great touch. But he was running in with a blaster, and then ends up encountering the Knights of Ren, which were, I'm assuming, the old students of Luke Skywalker that he was leading. It's never really confirmed, but that's my assumption.
Yeah, that was always my assumption too.
And then Rey uses the connection between them to hand him Leia's lightsaber, and then he fights the Knights of Ren while she takes on Palpatine, and then eventually he comes in and they take on Palpatine together. And it's a great moment in which the two apprentices have taken on the master.
Yeah, and the thing I love about like that scene is you're like, okay, the good guys are probably going to win.
Yeah.
How are we going to do it? Because that the tide of the fight between Rey, Ren, and Palpatine goes back and forth like 3 times.
Oh yeah.
One of them being when they come together and Palpatine realizes that Rey has the power to heal things.
Oh yeah.
So he starts taking that power
and
from
healing
him.
himself. While taking
so
power
that he
from them.
can be alive.
He
inverts
inverts
up
it
to this machine.
He inverts it and takes life from them to heal himself.
Yeah, and then he lets go with the fucking mother of all force lightning blast.
Because of the power he's taken from both of them, and basically, like, the entire galaxy is being fucking lightning blasted.
Yeah, you're like, what the fuck? Holy
It's fucking
shit.
insane. But in the end, what ultimately ends up saving them is love.
Yeah.
Love saves the day.
Love saves the day. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the part where it leads into the other super controversial decision that a lot of people aren't going to like, but I was okay with. And that's that all you Reylo shippers got what you wanted.
Oh, yeah. It totally happened.
It basically establishes that the love between Rey and Kylo ends up defeating the Emperor. Rey ends up taking both lightsabers and defeating him with the power of both Luke and Leia.
Yep.
As well as the embodiment of all... She becomes the embodiment of all Jedi instead of the embodiment of all Sith.
Yes.
When Ben dies. Well, not dies. He's thrown off a fucking thing and we thought he's dead.
Yeah.
But then after she defeats the Emperor, she is so gravely wounded, she dies. And that's when Ben comes climbing up. Rise of the Skywalker.
Yeah, Rise of the Skywalker, yeah.
And comes climbing up and then uses that healing power that she had to heal her, but because she was dead, that meant he had to give his life for her.
Yeah. He literally had to.
And they have a moment where they kiss, and he dies, and she lives, and happily ever after celebration.
Yeah. Way better celebration scene than the original. Like Return of the Jedi.
100%. Like I think like there's some little things that they do better than Return of the Jedi in this for all the clunkiness.
Yeah.
And then we get to after the celebration and everyone's all hugging and like we get a great moment in which Chewie's mourning Leia and then someone hands Chewie Leia's medal from A New Hope. Yeah,
the medal that she gave the medal that she gave him like at the end of the first movie. I was like, oh, that's fucking right.
Yeah, fucking right. It's like, oh man,
Rebel Alliance for life.
I'm gonna fucking cry, man. And then we get an epilogue in which basically Rey is putting an end to the Jedi line and she is burying the lightsabers of Luke and Leia.
On Tatooine.
At Tatooine, where the uncle and where
at the old moisture farm of Uncle what's his fucking Aunt Beru.
Yeah. And a random person passerby walks by and is just like, it's been a long time since anyone's been here. Who are you? I'm Rey. Rey who? And then she sees like the Force ghost of Luke and Leia. Yeah. Now here's my only argument is that I feel like Ben should have been there too because whatever.
Well, yeah.
The Force ghost of Ben should have been there too. And she says Rey Skywalker, basically symbolizing that she has chosen her family. This is her chosen family. She is the Skywalker. She has rejected the Palpatines.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that because that put the entire theme of the trilogy for me in like complete light. Now I understand what everything culminates to. It's all about the chosen family.
Yeah. And of course it ends like how it should, which is that happens. There's a little circular wipe to the credits.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 ba, 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 ba,
and like here's the thing. Our audience cheered at all the right moments. We gasped at all the right moments, and it was such a fun time at the movie.
Oh yeah.
So this movie, for all its clunkiness, is a real crowd pleaser. Like understand that.
Yeah.
Like, it is super crowd pleasing. Yeah, like the thing that I love the theme. I love the overall theme that you are not what you're born into. You can choose your own destiny, essentially.
Yeah. Which builds on the theme of the OT Star Wars, which is fate and destiny are not the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely. They thought that Anakin was gonna bring balance to the Force, but he did not in the bad way.
Yeah, in a way that was shitty. Then balance is restored by the end.
Here's the other thing I like. By the end of the movie, Rey is not just the last Jedi; she's the last Sith too.
Yeah,
she's a Palpatine.
Yeah,
so she embodies both. She has brought true balance to the Force because she is both.
Yep, and I kind of like the fact that she has her own lightsaber in the last scene, and it's yellow, which is the color of lightsaber we've never seen before.
One thing I missed though is that when they showed her when she fought her dark half in this one vision that Palpatine was giving her, her dark half had
she had the Darth Maul
lightsaber. I really wish her yellow one did that because she uses staves in the first movie, so I always thought it was really weird that they never gave her one of those lightsabers.
Yeah, it really felt like in this last scene, it should have been a double-ended fucking yellow lightsaber. Like, if just for that one shot.
Yeah, I would have preferred that. But here's the thing. I would have preferred a lot of things, but I liked what I got.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. It was really, really good, and the thing... All right, this is a minor thing. I'm an RPG nerd, so
yeah, sure.
This is what I like. You know, for you Star Wars RPG nerds, you know that one of the problems that setting has had as an RPG setting is that they've been so tied to the mythology of the OT Star Wars that you're like, well, can we have Jedi here? Like, whatever. No. After this, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
After this, no. Force powers. Like, no. You could just D&D now in the Star Wars universe after this trilogy to your heart's goddamn content.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, and I thought that was really cool.
Oh, yeah. And I think that I'm glad, now that this is over, I'm really looking forward to seeing the other ways in which they explore the Star Wars world, like stuff like The Mandalorian and things like that.
Yeah, which is really good.
Yeah, Mandalorian. Which is the thing. everything Disney Star Wars, as much as it has been highly controversial, I have pretty much liked. I liked all the movies. I liked the spin-off movies, Rogue One and Solo.
Yeah.
I liked The Mandalorian. I'm sure if I watched Star Wars Rebels, I would enjoy it, but I just haven't been interested in watching that particular.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why, but for me, like a cartoon just was.
Well, yeah, I watched some of the Clone Wars cartoons, but I was never really super invested in them.
Yeah,
either.
exactly.
It just for whatever reason, I like Star Wars live action. Like I was more invested in those Ewok movies than most of the cartoons.
Well, here's the funny thing: the Droids cartoon, I really fucking.
I remember that. Yeah,
the Droids cartoon was really good, but like for the most part.
The other thing I really like...
The animated stuff feels like addition.
The other thing I really like is Star Wars video games. Like, I really like The Force Unleashed. I really liked the Knights of the Old Republic series. There's
apparently the new... Was it
Fallen Order?
Fallen Order.
I really want to see that.
Awesome.
I really want to play that big time. So I tend to be a Star Wars movie guy.
Yeah.
But if they make more stuff like The Mandalorian, then I'll definitely be watching a lot more of the extra stuff.
Yeah. Like I think that's definitely the way it should go, because I was worried I was going to hate The Mandalorian. And I was worried that I wasn't going to like this movie.
I was worried every single entry we've done so far I was going to hate.
I know, right?
And I've loved it so much, which is why it breaks my heart that it's become such a controversial thing for everyone. And that,
well, it doesn't for stupid reasons.
Oh, yeah.
You know, for stupid reasons. Like, the main reason, like, there's any sort of hate base for, like, The Mandalorian or The Last Jedi, I'm just gonna say it, is because, it's women's.
Well, yeah.
Women's and minorities, man. Oh, fuck you.
If there was one mindset,
If
there was one mindset I wish I could wash out of the Star Wars fandom right now, it's this idea of seeing the sequel trilogy as this argument between two creators that hate each other.
No, that's clearly not the case.
Here's the way I see it, and maybe by describing my mindset going in, it'll help you understand these movies a little better. J.J. Abrams created The Force Awakens as the beginning of a trilogy with the original intention of handing it off to other creators to take it to where it was going to go.
Yeah.
Originally, he was not going to come back.
Because they wanted to recreate what had happened with the OT Star Wars trilogy.
Yes. And they had created this writer's room of people within Lucasfilm that was going to help tie most of the Star Wars universe stuff they were doing together. But still, there was still like loose ideas they were going to run with. They didn't have necessarily concrete plans. So then Rian Johnson comes in. He watches the cut that they had of The Force Awakens before it was released, and took the script and then wrote a movie building off of the stuff that happened there. It's like, what happened at the end of that movie? Okay, so Finn has just made it very clear that he only helped the Resistance to save Rey, and then he was put in a coma. Rey has just handed a lightsaber off to Luke, so we ended on a cliffhanger there. And Kylo was just defeated by a person who had zero lightsaber training whatsoever, who just learned she had the Force, despite supposedly being this badass, like, new Darth Vader character.
Yeah.
What's going to happen after that? And so, like, Rian Johnson took that as like, all right, let's answer those questions. Okay, obviously, Snoke is not going to be happy that Kylo lost and is going to berate him for losing to someone with that much inexperience.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what happens. Luke, as established in the previous movie, left and abandoned everyone because he felt like he had failed them all because of what happened with Ben Solo. So naturally,
what happened with Ben Solo?
So naturally, he's not going to be super happy to see his father's lightsaber again. That's going to remind him of even other bad memories.
But it's going to remind him of the day he lost his arm.
So he sees
that's the worst day of his life.
And so he's also going to reject someone coming to him with an enormous amount of unchecked power, with a propensity to lean towards the dark side of the Force.
Yeah.
Of course he's going to reject that person as a pupil. He doesn't even want to take on a pupil. His last one became
Kylo Ren. And this one is coming up to him with those big eyes that says, like, be my Force daddy.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my god, that was a relationship between fucking Palpatine and my dad. Fuck that.
And here's the other thing. Since the previous movie established that he felt like he had failed because Kylo Ren went the way he was way, Rian Johnson asked the question, okay, well, what would he have done that would have made him feel like this was his fault?
Yeah.
And so he wrote a way in which that happened. It's all building upon what was established in the previous movie. And so enter this movie, while there are some things
and something I want to bring up about The Last Jedi, Mark Hamill did ultimately agree with Rian Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
He did ultimately agree with him. Like, it was just a matter of getting him to understand how, getting the actor needed to understand how Luke makes this mistake.
Yeah. And because it's the middle part of the trilogy is usually where the darkest stuff happens. It's like the Two Towers, it's stuff like that. It's Empire Strikes Back. So he made the entire movie about failure. So the characters are all having to face failure and grow from it. And the characters all have individual arcs from that. At the end of Force Awakens, Finn has not actually joined the Resistance. He's only doing it to save Rey. So here's an arc that gets him to the point where by the end of it, he's calling himself Rebel Scum.
Yeah.
He's joined the Resistance.
Rebel Scum.
He's got this arc that leads him to that. And to get to that arc, he has to see the way that this has affected the galaxy through the eyes of Rose and other things. And the slaves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, he gets to the point where he can do that by the end of it. He wrote this arc. Luke has to get to the point in which he's willing to come back. So he starts off at a point of having run away and abandoned it, and he has to get to the point in which he's going to come back to restore hope.
Yeah. And all that, while at the end tying it all up together with Rian Johnson looking at the audience going like, yeah, you're part of the Rebel Alliance now.
Yeah.
Which I thought was amazing.
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of The Last Jedi is that thing at the end where it's just like everyone can be part of the Resistance and everyone can be a Jedi.
Because the kids are playing with little Star Wars action figures, baby.
It makes me so sad how many people misinterpreted that last scene with the Broom Boy as being, who is Broom Boy? No, that's not important.
No,
Broom Boy is you.
Yeah, exactly.
You fucking idiots. Broom Boy is you. That's the point. And don't tell me that, Rian Johnson did it poorly. No, he didn't.
No, he did perfectly. He did fucking perfectly.
So Rian Johnson builds on all that, and then we get into this movie, and this movie builds upon where that movie left off. Okay, what's Kylo been doing? Well, Kylo's been destroying any and all fucking challenges to his power now that he's gotten to power.
Yeah.
And a new challenge has shown up with the Emperor, which is the new twist that changes everything.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. It's not like the Emperor didn't just randomly show up in the last movie in the fucking original trilogy.
Oh, no. Like, he shows up once in Empire, and then, like, he shows up on that fucking shuttle thing. He's like, I have foreseed he will come to you. He will? Yes.
Rey has just finally hooked up with the rest of the team and with Leia. And because Luke gave his life to restore hope into the galaxy in the previous movie, she's going to need training. So now she's being trained by Leia. Like, it's all building upon what happened before it. In the previous movie, she was constantly being pulled to the dark side. Well, why was she constantly being pulled to the dark side? Is it just because she has anger in her, or is there something more here? Well, that is answered through the Palpatine thing.
Yeah, because Palpatine is seducing her.
Absolutely.
Like, we're watching what a lot of what turns out what we realize is a lot of the things that are happening in Last Jedi with Rey and most of her visions is Palpatine talking to her the way Snoke got to fucking Kylo Ren.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and here's the thing: I can only assume that he's stacking the deck. So whichever one of them wins is going to be the one.
Yeah. Whichever one gets there is sort of like, all right, I'll take you.
It's like winner takes all.
Yeah, like that seems like a very Palpatine thing.
Finn and Poe enter
because he did that with fucking Luke and Vader.
Oh yeah. Finn and Poe enter this movie where they left off in the last movie. Poe has now become a leader who is now
he's now a general,
making smarter choices and knowing when to run and when to fight and all that stuff. Finn is now just 100% embraced being a resistance fighter and is fighting alongside them, and then we take them from there. All this stuff, I don't see this as people destroying what came to the movie before it. I see them as them building upon it and adding new twists and turns.
Well, yeah, clearly. It's like there's a moment in Rise of Skywalker where after Leia dies, they need a commanding officer because I don't know if you noticed this, but all the other commanding officers died in The Last Jedi except for Leia. And so now that she's gone, they're like, we need a new general.
Yeah.
Leia said it was going to be you.
Yeah.
So you got to take it on. And of course, like Poe has that like, oh God, I'm not ready.
By movie 3, Poe is now able to lead the entire resistance. Like that's
and
it's through the journey he had in the second one, because in the first movie he doesn't have much of an arc. He's
just the way he is.
He's a plot thing. He lets the plot
his arc is very, very subtle. Like, because he has to learn the single lesson, which is going on the attack is not always the best option.
Oh yeah, and that's the second movie, because in the first movie he doesn't really have much of an arc. He's just there, and that's actually partially why I didn't realize he was supposed to be a main character when I saw the first movie the first time.
He kind of disappears through that whole middle half.
And by the second movie he became a real character for me, because we established who he is, we established his flaws, we give him an arc, and by the end of the movie he's now ready to lead. It's great. And in this movie he becomes the leader and takes the mantle. And then he reaches a point in this movie where he thought he made the same mistakes in The Last Jedi, but then fucking,
Lando comes in.
And he's just like, nah, man, we got you, because this time the galaxy's behind you.
Yeah, well, I also
because the hope was sparked at the end of the last movie, and the hope is here now.
Yeah, well, the other thing I liked is that when Poe's having like this huge amount of doubt, it's Lando who gives him like the inside scoop, which is like, how did you know how to do this? Lando's like, we didn't.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were fucking doing. You talk about we're just standing up to the Empire. We're a bunch of assholes, kid.
Absolutely. Now, there are threads that I do kind of wish they hadn't completely abandoned, but it's not the first time Star Wars has done that. I would have liked to see more Rose and Finn and stuff like that, but it is what it is. But here's the other thing. If you feel like this is the filmmaker saying fuck you to the previous movie, how did you feel in the original trilogy when Luke and Leia all of a sudden became brother and sister after hinting at them having a love triangle in the first movie and then having them kiss in the second movie? Like, how did you feel about that?
Yeah, I remember.
Was that a fuck you to the previous movies, or was that a plot development?
Well, all right, I gotta admit, having been there as a kid at the time, here's what I thought. I was like, okay, this brother and sister thing makes sense. I'm not sure about this, but I am your father bullshit.
Well, here was the thing. It was a thing that was, because originally they were going to introduce a new character who's going to be Luke's sister, and that was going to be There Was Another. And instead of adding a whole new character and complicating things, they simplified it and made it Leia. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. But it wasn't a thing that was planned from the get-go, and you can tell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. But the important thing is that the through line becomes very clear that beautiful metaphysical story is completely intact. And it is wonderful. I fucking loved it.
Me too.
I'm glad that, I don't know how to say it. This is the big bang, bow, wing, zoom finish. Yeah. They knew they had to do it big, and they did.
Every moment I felt like it was going to fall apart at any moment, and it never did. It kind of stuck. It stuck the landing despite everything. Yeah. It was a clunky fucking ship, but it stuck the landing.
Yeah, it's like the Millennium Falcon of movies, baby.
Yeah. Actually, that actually works.
Yeah, that's the symbol of the movie.
So anyway, Count Jackula, where can they find you?
All right, you can find me on Twitter at Count_Jackula. You can find me on Instagram at Satanic Jackula. And you can find me on Twitch at Count_Jackula. I'm not hard to find, and I stream on Twitch almost every day. But the two weekly shows that we do that are really big are Titty and Shrimp Thursday, which starts at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Twitch, and Satanic Sunday, which starts at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, also on Twitch.
And y'all know me, I'm the Horror Guru. You can find me on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube. Just look up the Horror Guru or Blood Splattered Cinema, and I will be there. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe onto this video, and to ring that notification bell so that you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. And if you're feeling especially generous, be sure to check out my Patreon page. And remember, even if you decide to give me $1 a month, it can go a long way and help me keep my roof over my head. And with all that said, may the force be
with you.
The force be with you. And as Jack used to say, Ave Satanas, because I got a ghost shirt.
Feel the power of the real dark side, baby. We got titties and shrimp.
Cut.